Welcome to Khanversations. I'm Muqtedar Khan. Today I'm going to talk to you about a rather sad event which has sparked protests in Iran, national protests all over, protests which have resulted in the death of more than 40 protesters. Before I do that, please subscribe to Khanversations and ring the bell icon so that you can get notifications when I post my next video. In Iran, a young lady, 22 years old, Mahsa Amini, was arrested for not wearing the hijab properly. And within a few hours of being held in police custody by the morality police of Iran, she died in police custody. The police has released videos to show and suggest that there was no physical torture involved or there was no harm done to her, and they claim that she died of a pre-existing heart condition, but her parents insist that the body was not handed to them, and what little they could see of her body before it was buried showed signs of torture, especially her feet. So there are these claims from both sides, but what has happened essentially is it sparked nationwide protests, and people all over Iran are up in arms, and they are garnering a lot of sympathy from the international community. The United States has already imposed targeted sanctions on the morality police. The issue of hijab has become a major global issue. There are lots of debates. There was time when hijab was imposed on Iran since the Iranian Revolution in 1979. It was in reaction to the time when people were forcibly asked to remove the hijab in Iran. So in many ways, in many Muslim countries, when they seek to Islamize, the battleground for Islamization often ends up on the head or the body of the Muslim woman. They have to bear the burden of Islamization first and foremost. Muslim countries who talk about Islamization a lot, take the case of the Taliban, for example, who want to establish an Islamic country. They never provide the kind of benefits that you would expect from a typical Islamic country that exists in theory and in models: justice, equality, elimination of poverty, distributive justice. None of that exists. It's all just restrictions on women and their attire. The superficiality to which the religion has been reduced is amazing. Iran has been suffering from, obviously, sanctions imposed by the West for decades. The COVID pandemic has had a serious impact on Iran, and the recent global inflation, supply chain disruptions, all of that have had a severe impact on the Iranian economy, and the Iranian people are struggling more than most other people in the world. And so as a result of that, the frustration at the inability of the government to provide economic and other relief has also contributed to these protests. While people are obviously upset about it, and women who are out there protesting, throwing their hijab, cutting their hair, are basically expressing their disgust with the current so-called Islamic regime of Iran. There is also the underlying currents of complete dissatisfaction with Islamic governance. Muslims who are obsessed with Islamization should really ask the question that look at the Muslim world today, whether it is Gaza under Hamas, or Iran under this Islamic regime, or Afghanistan under Taliban. They are suffering, they are hungry, they are starving, and on top of that, they have to deal with their own governments who are oppressive. The Iranian Republican Guard has said that they would deal with the enemy, and the enemy that they are talking about are the women of their own country, their mothers, their sisters, their daughters, their wives. So it's a very sad situation. Iran is a very sophisticated country. It has tremendous intellectual depth, both historically and even today. The women of Iran are highly educated, highly accomplished. So to treat them in such a superficial manner, to think, oh, your virtue is limited to how you appear in public, whether you wear too much makeup or less makeup, whether your hair are showing or not, is ridiculous. It also is a strange thing that the Iranian government has such low opinion about the religion of Islam that they feel that if they were to provide freedom of thought and freedom of expression to the Iranian people, then they would not practice Islam. Islam does not have appeal for them. But they want to be Islamic, so they want to force these so-called external manifestations of Islam on their population. Islam has tremendous appeal for those who want to practice the faith. There are lots of people here in the West who convert to Islam of their own free will. And there are many Muslims, women in the West, like Ilhan Omar, for example, who wear the hijab willingly. Nobody is forcing them to do so. It is more authentic and a true expression of their faith because they choose to practice their faith under circumstances where they're free to choose. In the absence of freedom, any expression of religion under duress, from the fear of being jailed, from the fear of being tortured, is not true faith. Shame. Shame on Iran if it feels that its population needs to be tortured in order to practice Islam. Of course, there are geopolitical implications. The Iranian regime is under pressure to emphasize its Islamic identity. There are lots of discussions globally about how the Iranian population is extremely unhappy with the current regime. It is not a democracy. It is becoming more and more authoritarian. So they feel that this is a time for them to really suppress the population and force them to toe the line of the government. But when we talk about these issues, there seems to be a double speak. We talk about hijab as a choice of Muslim women. But if it was a choice, then why would the Iranian president insist that Christiane Amanpour wear a hijab while talking to him? Was he so afraid of himself that he would be distracted by her hair that he would perhaps say something that might undermine Iran's interest? This whole idea of trying to force your values upon others is something that deserves to be rejected by everybody. The Quran is very clear. It says, La ikraha fid din. There is no compulsion in religion because truth has become self-evident from falsehood. And I think that Muslim countries, Muslim intellectuals, Muslim organizations, both here in America, in Europe, and other Muslim countries, should really seriously condemn such practices wherever they are. It is just as bad to force women to stop wearing hijab as it is to force women to wear hijab. Women deserve to have the freedom to be moral agents, and so give them the freedom to choose to be good Muslims. And that is my message to the Iranians, that we are with you. I know we can't be with you there in the streets, and I know we can't be with you there when the government will torture you and kill you. Already 41 people have been killed in these protests. But we are with you in spirit, and our prayers are with you. Let's keep our eyes on Iran, and hopefully you found this commentary short but useful and meaningful. If you found it thoughtful, please share it with your colleagues, your friends, your students, and do subscribe to Khanversations and ring the bell icon so that you get to know when I post my next video. This is Muqtedar Khan signing off. Take care.